Chapter 676. Time that has passed cannot return. But, I grasped the situation. Radiance mantra, ended up activating at full power. My wish to return to a time before Ohiseo awakens her fate has caused a massive butterfly effect. First, I need to gather information. Carefully avoiding looking up at the sky, I begin to speak to Jaeon Myung-hoon and the other comrades. First of all, everyone. There's something I need to say. It happens then. It is at that moment. Yin Yang, slop, Deputy CEO, you son of a bitch. Quote. I realize that the situation just now has been nullified. And I quickly analyze the situation to figure out what's going on. I see. The fact that fate is already fixed, so it's meaningless means. Any actions that deviate from fate are not permitted. It really is meaningless. Time that has passed can never return. This is the first law that anyone dealing with history must know. Once a timeline is observed by the future king, it becomes history that absolutely cannot be reversed. Though I have returned to the past, this regression is nothing more than a complete recollection of memories, no different from glancing over the canvas of myriad forms and connections. Any attempt to rewrite the past is stopped and nullified by the head realm. Still, I am satisfied even with just this. With this amount of time, yes. It's not bad. With this much, I should be able to grasp the enlightenment needed to block Great Mountain Supreme Deity's strike. Good. If it's come to this, then rather. Let's enjoy it. Resolving so, I hide the entirety of myself up to now deep inside the human Seo Eun-yun, leaving behind only the memories of Seo Eun-yun from the Earth era, and bury myself within Seo Eun-yun. Thus, the story unfolds exactly the same. Shiho emerges and tears our limbs apart, the two-headed snake comes and drains our blood, and the trio at the heavenly being stage appears and heals us. And I, seeing Azure Tiger Saint while watching the three, suddenly feel a surge of emotion I can't suppress. It is at that moment. Hua, what is Thyza? Kuog, save me, hgg quag, Koog, from the bodies of Jin Byuk-ho and Heo Gwak, swords of glass erupt and protrude uncontrollably, and their bodies transform into glass true fire, returning to me. Azure Tiger Saint holds out the longest, but even he seems about to return to thee. However, just around that time, the head realm fortunately initiates normalization. Yin Yang, single quote. Who, just the fragment of emotion I felt seeing Azure Tiger Saint caused a fragment of power to leak, nearly leading to their total return and annihilation. For once, this restriction is actually welcome. I calm my startled heart, realizing I nearly killed my old master by making him return to me, and continue observing the story. Some time later, I encounter another familiar face. Ho, it's Seo Weol. He takes Ohiseo in his arms and carries her away. At the end, the Mad Lord, Kim Yeon's guide, appears. Mad Lord. Remembering his painful past, I bitterly smile to myself. The Mad Lord takes Kim Yeon and casts me into Yangguo. It is at that moment. Only then do I notice something strange. This is. Only then do I realize that Kim Young-hoon is not visible. It's strange. I haven't seen Kim Young-hoon anywhere up until now, and yet I've been treating him all this time as if he's a real, present existence. What in the world is going on? However, before I can even feel the strangeness, Seo Eun-yun, who has been stripped of all memories except those from Earth, speaks as if Kim Young-hoon is right beside him and continues the story. Wait, I'm sorry about this. Saying such, I fail to suppress the strangeness and reveal my presence, sweeping over all the living beings in the head realm with my consciousness at once. Feeling even my extremely weakened presence, all living being faint on the spot, foaming at the mouth. Microorganisms and weak insects die instantly. Even after going that far, I still cannot find Kim Young-hoon anywhere in the head realm. I see. This must be how a future leap achieved through true attainment appears. The past can no longer change. But Kim Young-hoon has vanished into the future, and thus until that future is reached, no matter how many regressions occur, he does not exist in any timeline. Yet because the past cannot be changed, everyone in this world, myself included, continues to behave as if Kim Young-hoon exists. And it is at that moment, I discover one more strange truth. Wait, why does this flow feel? I go with Kim Young-hoon to an herb shop to earn money, buy a manor, and have Kim Young-hoon join the demon-slaying sect of Seokyung City's 4 stars 3 demons. Then I follow Kim Young-hoon, working as a strategist for the Woolan Alliance, amass wealth, and grow old. This is the first cycle. These are events from my first regression. What is this? It's not the 0th cycle, but why am I acting as I did in the first? It's strange. If I had returned simply to the first regression point, I should be following the behavior of the 12th cycle. Next, I should be enveloping myself in the formless sword and ascending. After that, I would spend over 10,000 years to become a true immortal, reach the outer sea, and challenge the great mountain supreme deity. Such would be the normal flow of time. Single quote. No way, if this is how it is. With a pounding heart, I slowly look back on my past life. And finally, at the end of the first cycle, I die at around the age of 80. And then, Kuriririk, I return to ascension path once more. This time, it doesn't feel like the vivid regression triggered by death at the hands of the great mountain supreme deity, but more like rewinding a video or flipping a storybook backward. Regardless, I understand through this. Single quote. If the point I've returned to is the first cycle, and I continue to look back through the second, third, and on until I reach the 1005th cycle to meet the great mountain supreme deity, and if dying 1009 times is all included in this 1010th regression, I instantly realize how much time I've gained. 100 million years. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. I have, in effect, been given the chance to reflect on the entirety of my life spanning 100 million years. Ho ho, ha, what is th? Kukwik. As I laugh, the Seo whale from the third cycle who tries to take Ohai Seo explodes and died, and by the principle of my existence, glass true fire spreads through Indra's net and sets ablaze Seo whale's main body along with all versions of him in this cycle. Kuuaa. Seo whale screams in genuine agony as he begins to suffer. Soon after, a taiji covers the world, and the world is restored to normal again, but I cannot suppress the surging sense of relief and continue to laugh. Hoo ha 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 ha, excellent, until I reorganize the enlightenment of Martial Pinnacle. I've gained 100 million years. Moreover, with this much time, I can even think about the secrets in the salt sea, and I can dig deeper into the secrets of the world I didn't notice before. Delighted by this unexpected gain, I begin to look back on the lives I've lived. Thus, the 1010th regression, the reviewing of past lives through the Radiance mantra, truly begins. How irritating. Those Mockley clan bastards. I burst apart and kill the entire Mockley clan, who in the third cycle tries to kill the third cycle Young Hoon Hung Nim, with a press of my pinky finger. Yin Yang. Eventually, the taiji once again blankets the world, rendering everything as if it never happened, but I continue exploring the past while feeling a refreshing clarity I have never felt before. Still, it's a bit regrettable. If only I weren't swept away by the power of the head realm, could I truly rewrite the past? They say time that has passed cannot return, yet while I look back on it, such thoughts sometimes occur to me. Especially in the 6th cycle, in the past where I meet Cheongman Ryong again, those thoughts become even more prominent. Quote. Master, this book of folktales seems to have a slightly different number of stories compared to when I saw it before. Do you know anything about that? I ask Cheongman Ryong this question as I look at the book of folktales, which includes stories like, the young man who melted ice with his bare body to serve fish to his mother. My master, Yellow Snake. Cheongman Ryong strokes his goatee and shouts. You fool, is now the time to be worrying about some storybook? Even just searching for ways to overcome your heavenly rejection phenomenon is already making my head throb. If you don't go and dig through the archive right now, I'll thrash you with a 6-sided club. I flinch as I recall the 6-sided club of the Salt Sea Supreme Deity, but soon smile warmly and say, please don't be like that. Just tell me once, Master. Your disciple is curious. HMPH, you impudent brat. You don't even understand your master's heart. Cheongman Ryong grumbles, but still opens the folktale book with me and furrows his brows. Stories with the theme of sincerity moves the heavens, number around 7 in total. Sometimes, a few more are added depending on the region, and there are places with as many as 13, but these 7 tales never change. The story of the boy who catches a carp in winter for his mother. The story of a blind man praying to the heavens and regaining his sight. The story of a husband who lights a fire on the tip of his finger to cure his wife's fatal illness. The story of a poor old man who becomes wealthy after obtaining a goblin's hat. The story of a child driven from home by the schemes of a fox sister, who meets the Dragon King and learns how to appease her, then returns and reconciles with her. The story of an old man at the end of his lifespan who performs 1,000 rites toward the heavens to extend his life. The story of a child born without fortune who goes to ask the Jade Emperor why he has no fortune. These 7 stories are found in every region, and their original forms hardly change. Haha, is that so? But hold on, the story of the old man performing rites to the heavens to extend his lifespan. Let's find a book about that. There might be a way to block your heavenly rejection phenomenon. While telling the stories, Cheonmin Ryong seems to recall something and begins rummaging through the archive. Wo Wang, the world begins to be engulfed once more by the Taiji. It must be because I brought up something that wasn't truly a story from the past. There's something I'm curious about, Master. Before the Taiji fully nullifies the world, I ask Cheonmin Ryong a question. What is it? Something about the folktales. Admittedly, those stories have become so ridiculously widespread that even cultivators sometimes study them. For example, the genders of the folktale protagonists are always consistent, or something like that. Well, there's plenty to say about that. In some regions, if the main character in the first story is a girl, all the protagonists in the following stories are women or old ladies. If the first one's a boy, then the rest are all men or old men. No, more importantly, you rascal, aren't you supposed to be looking for the documents I told you to find? Master, if fate truly exists, and no matter what we do we cannot overcome it, then what would you do? At my question, Cheonmin Ryong scrunches his face as if wondering why I'm asking such pointless nonsense. You're speaking nonsense. Even if fate does exist, does fate live my life for me? Quote. If I just sit around doing nothing and stupidly scratch my belly, does fate advance my life on its own for me? Don't make me laugh. Even if fate has determined my life, we are the ones who live it. As long as my heart is still beating, how I live that life and how I accept fate is entirely my own domain. Quote. That is why, even if fate has fixed my future, I will live to the best of my ability within it. If I cannot overcome the mountain of fate, I will have a son or disciple and make them dig through that mountain. If they cannot, then their children will. As long as I create the foundation to pass down the will from generation to generation, then one day, that mountain will be thrown into the sea. Some may laugh and call me the foolish old man, but what of it? Fate does not determine us. It is those who live life who determine fate. Quote. For some reason, my chest swells with emotion at Cheonmin Ryong's words. I take out the wheel and slow the nullification process of the head realm as much as possible, then ask. Quote. What if that son or disciple inherits the will in a twisted way? What if they misunderstand the will to move the mountain, and instead use tyranny and oppression to force it upon those around them, passing down the will in a clearly evil way? What then? At my words, Cheonmin Ryong seems to ponder for a moment, then speaks without hesitation. If that happens, it means the master taught them wrong. If you raise someone by beating them too much when they're young, then all they learn is violence. That's probably why they turned out that way. Quote. But, if the master embraces them with the right amount of discipline, advice, and love, and they still grow into someone who distorts and transmits the will like that, then perhaps that's no longer their own will. It's not their own will. In this case, it's fate. Fate endlessly lashes at the successor and twists the will into something distorted. Accumulating and accumulating the bridle of karmic retribution and resentment and gratitude, until the person can no longer control even themselves. Yes, just like a wheel rolling down a slope is unable to control its own body to stop, the world refuses to let them be and drives them into the abyss. There's no other way to put it. Quote. Then, in that case, hasn't the person ultimately lost to fate? Well, that would only be the case if there's no one else in the world except for that foolish old man and his disciple, or his son. But the world has far more kinds of people and beings than that. Cheonmin Ryong gives a small chuckle as he speaks. If one's successor turns strange, then one can ask someone else for help, or they can find a new successor. Maybe a close friend of the foolish old man might one day correct that successor. If there's only one person in the world, they might never be able to defy fate. But if there are as many people under the heavens as stars in the sky, if those connections are as vast and diverse as clouds, then even the heavens can be surpassed and flown beyond, don't you think so? Quote. If, one day you meet someone who's like a wheel rolling down the slope, then help them. Surely, deep inside, they themselves know they've gone wrong and want to stop, but even if they want to stop, they probably can't on their own. They are surely hoping someone will stop them. Quote. That is why, if you too want to overcome fate, then always give and receive the ties between people, and be generous and help others. For only that is the way to surpass the heavens, and only that is the way to overcome heavenly rejection. Co Unyan Rui en Xian. Single quote. Exclamation mark. Single quote. Pot. At the very moment the world is nullified again by the head realm, I open my eyes wide. The one who called out to me in the final moment is surely Master. It is the personality of the Salt Sea Supreme Deity, dwelling within Cheongman Ryong. That's the only way I can feel it. Perhaps it is the influence of the wheel. I don't know the exact cause, but the result is left imprinted in my heart. Master. I close my eyes and let the stories of the past continue to flow. I tried to reach enlightenment of marital pinnacle through slow, repentant enlightenment. But Cheongman Ryong, no, with just a single line of words from the Salt Sea Supreme Deity, the enlightenment of martial pinnacle. The enlightenment of connection, feels as though it is becoming one with me. Thank you. Only now do I begin to truly understand what it means to embrace connection in my heart, and I begin to move forward, stepping steadily on the enlightenments of the past. Time that has passed cannot return. But, time that has passed can still be looked back upon. As I look back upon time, I steadily step on the footholds leading to the ultimate of the heart. Chapter 677, Tragic History 1. Countless moments brush past before my eyes. And now, I once again arrive at that moment. Entering heavens beyond the path. Formless sword. A single streak of a sword of formlessness cleaves through the blue lightning and rends apart the thunderclouds of the heavens. How splendid. I smile at my past self as I recall that moment. How many times have I ever felt such excitement for martial arts as I did then? The moment I first obtained the formless sword, it truly felt as if I had obtained everything in the world. Sirring. Recalling that scene, I once again refine the impermanent sword. As I watch the me who obtained the formless sword, the impermanent sword becomes ever so slightly sharper. And it is at that moment. This is, indeed, the moment when Yang Su Jin's lingering thought drew me in. In a mysterious space where seven-colored lightning rumbles, I face Yang Su Jin's lingering thought. And I am able to understand a truth I could not grasp before. This space, the space of seven-colored lightning where Yang Su Jin's lingering thought appears. This space is not inside the head realm. So shattered heaven peak of the head realm was merely an entrance to arrive at this place. Becoming aware of this new truth, I perceive my surroundings and identify the nature of this space. This is the space of origin, the starting point of creation. It is the place I once reached with the golden speed heavenly King Kim Young-hoon, the outskirts of the void. And now, I can read the traces engraved somewhere within this space, traces that I could not decipher before due to my insufficient cultivation. Traces of battle, numerous lightning-forged spears, swords, and weapons, shattered as they resisted someone, remain here as fragments. The remnants of these lightning weapons are so strong that they seem etched into the world itself, but it is clear that the existence who faced these weapons utterly snapped and crushed them as if they were mere twigs. Are these the traces of a battle between the future king and Yang Su Jin? This is like a battlefield where a peak master played with a snot-nosed child. I get the sense that Yang Su Jin, in all likelihood, was toyed with like a child in front of the future king. I see now. I had many doubts about the point in time when Yang Su Jin left behind this lingering thought, but now, many of them are resolved. Yang Su Jin must have, after being defeated by the future king, barely managed to leave this trace while dying. Even that was probably not due to his own power, but rather due to the peculiarity of the authority created by the absolute he possessed. As I observe the traces left in this space of origin, I come to understand yet another thing. And judging by the aftermath left behind, it is highly likely that the battlefield of Yang Su Jin and the future king was not merely the audience chamber, but the entire world. Audience chamber, head realm, the whole of Mount Sumeru, outer sea, even the outskirts of the Akashic records, all these regions must have been thrown into chaos by their battle. From my analysis as the one closest to the ultimate of martial arts, these remnants are just a portion of the massive scars left by a battle that swept through countless regions. But then why are the beings of this world unaware of the aftermath of that battle, and why have I also failed to discover it until now? No, that's a foolish question. It's simple. Whether through a revision by the head realm or fate manipulation by the future king, there are many methods that could have been used. After analyzing several aspects through the seven-colored space itself, I finally see Yang Su Jin's lingering shadow appear within the depths of the space. Kuring, Kurururung, O ender of the later generation. Then, unlike my past self, I appear directly before the lingering shadow of Yang Su Jin, halting the revision of the head realm through the wheel. Kugugugugu. The presence of me, who has reached the peak of heaven-earth great net, causes Yang Su-jin's shadow to flinch for a moment. I've been wanting to meet you, Yang Su-jin. Though in terms of timeline, he is technically my senior, our actual age gap is so vast that I discard formalities and ask directly. I have many questions. Can you answer them all? At my question, Yang Su-jin's lingering shadow sheds tears of blood and replies. The time allowed for us to meet is very short. Clank. In response, I distort space-time with attraction force through the Northern Dipper sealing immortal flag and the phenomena extinguishing mantra, making time flow more slowly. It is the same thing the Liberation Supreme Deity Bong Myong once did to me within the Serving Command arc. Then, by once again turning the wheel and rewriting part of the principle, I create the conditions for a slow conversation with Yang Su-jin. That should do. Of course, even with that, Yang Su-jin's shadow continues to gradually fade, but it is clear that we can now converse for a much longer time than before. Yang Su-jin's lingering shadow speaks in a tone that seems a bit dumbfounded. Do as you please. First, let me ask what I'm most curious about. Have you faced the future king? It is only obvious, but there's not much I can say about him. If I speak of him too often, he will notice. I understand. I'll ask only 3 questions. That should be fine, right? Go ahead. Do you know the true name of the future king? I immediately ask about the future king's true name. If I know that name, I feel that I may be able to deduce something about the 3 faces of the future king I've encountered. Filled square, is what it's said to be, but can you understand it? Strange. With the level of authority you have, you should surely be a heavenly king, yet you cannot comprehend it. Then again, to hear my arrangements, you'd normally have to come before awakening your fate. What a contradictory existence you are. I get it for now. I can't understand it at my current rank, and seeing you mention Heavenly King, it must mean I need, at the very least, the authority related to the Absolute in order to hear it. In other words, I need to reach the heavenly venerable level. Grabbing my throbbing head, I let out a sigh. Then, here's the second question. Do you know the purpose of the future king? Not in detail, but one thing is certain. He seeks salvation. Salvation, what do you mean by that? Is that the third question? We are reaching a dangerous point. If I answer this and you continue questioning about the future king, he will notice. No. Perhaps he already has and is simply letting it happen. Understood. I won't count that as the third question. Here's the final question about him. How does the future king think of us? At my last question, I can feel Yang Su-jin's lingering shadow glaring at me. You are courting danger. You are aware that sentence contains 2 questions. You are cutting it too close. That's right. Through a slight trick, I attempt to ask 4 questions. How does the future king think of us? Contains 2 distinct questions. How does he view us? And, does he think? If I receive the answer to this question, I can resolve the doubt of whether the future king is a personality-bearing being or not. And also to some extent, what he intends to do through us. What does he think of us? That very question would reveal whether the future king is a sentient being or not. Can you handle it? If I answer this, he may immediately come looking for you. Don't worry, he won't find me, especially, not in this place. How arrogant. You act like a mountain divine spirit walking the immortal Tao of the mountain. Yang Su-jin criticizes me, but since I am in a state of confidence, it is something I can say. Answer me. I can bear it. At those words, Yang Su-jin's lingering shadow looks at me as if it's absurd and slowly opens its mouth. To the future king, enders are seeds to be sown and fruit to be harvested, toys to play with, chess pieces and setups on a board, and at the same time, mass-produced goods that can be recreated again and again, thus he places no great value on us. To him, we are nothing but trash. The moment I hear those words, I shoot out from Yang Su-jin's space. Shiver. Alongside a foreboding intuition, I feel the same ominous and repulsive aura in the far distance that I felt when Oh Hai-seo uttered her fate. No, not yet. He hasn't seen me yet. There's still time. The place where Yang Su-jin's space resides is in the outskirts of the Akashic records. In other words, it's the very space Kim Young-hoon once used as a foothold to activate the Golden Great Thousand Worlds. Found it. I fly toward the golden trajectory visible in the distance. Sure enough, the trajectory through which Kim Young-hoon transcended all spacetime to head toward the future exists in this spacetime as well. Landing there, I immediately draw the impermanence sword. Now, and just before the repulsive gaze of some being reaches me, I hide my body within the golden light and grind down my entire form using the impermanence sword. Pasasasik, heavenly escape, Kwaik, my heavenly escape, now infused with the enlightenment of martial pinnacle, drags me into a depth of the domain of purity I've never reached before, completely hiding me from every place in the world. Ah, as I lose consciousness, I feel heaven and earth enshrouded by Taiji. At the same time, I sense the disgusting gaze of that entity sweeping just above the golden trajectory into which I melted. Just as I thought, just as I anticipated, the gaze only skims above the traces of Kim Young-hoon's absolute and fails to detect me who has dissolved below. Through this I realize another truth about the future king. His current state is not complete. It's another matter if he sees me with his main body, but merely overlooking Mount Sumeru from the audience chamber with 3 faces detached, he cannot find me. Suaa. With that final thought, the world is once again revised. Yin Yang. I return to stand before Yang Soo-jin's lingering shadow. So I've returned to when I just encountered Yang Soo-jin's shadow. Then the memories of just now. You madman, I've seen the arrangements and lingering thoughts of my predecessor Enders and witnessed countless madmen, but your level of madness, I've seen only in silver basket, obsidian, and lapis lazuli. Impressive. Did you resist the revision? That's impossible. It's merely that the place you escaped to coincidentally happened to be a trace of a golden body, and due to the resonance between the golden body's fate and my power, as one who absorbed the corpse of the ender of my generation who bore the golden body's fate, I just barely managed to remember the moments before the revision. Quote. You ate your comrade's corpse. Do not misunderstand. What I devoured belonged to a soldier who unjustly oppressed and tried to kill me. We were never comrades. That bastard was an enemy even back on Earth. Quote. Still, I thought you saw Earthlings as humans. Didn't you ever think of it as cannibalism? What's done is done. What is there to speak about? Do not speak carelessly when you don't know much about me. Besides, at the time I absorbed him, he was a true non-human, so it doesn't matter. Unable to follow Yang Soo-jin's line of thinking, I asked dumbfoundedly. After non-human comes true non-human. What do you mean by that? It's something I only realized after reaching the audience chamber. Looking at you, you've already figured it out too. We didn't have a soul. We were merely fragments of some law that constitutes this world. I nod, and seeing my reaction, Yang Soo-jin continues weakly. The reason I considered the living beings of this world as non-human was solely because I believed they were ruled by fate. But the truth is, we too were ruled by fate and didn't even possess a soul. Thus, we Enders are actually more wretched than the living beings of Mount Sumeru. We were the true non-humans. Quote. I feel a headache coming on from a way of thinking so twisted I don't even know where to begin pointing it out. Having a conversation with someone who's already settled on such an extreme conclusion feels like talking to the great mountain supreme deity. Of course, he's a little different from GWAKM in direction, but the degree of madness is the same. And this kind of lunatic dares to call me crazy. Ridiculous. If we'd lived in the same era, I'd have beaten him even more than Jaeon Myung-hoon. No, maybe I should just say he's practically the same as Oh Hai-seo from 120,000 years ago. If we'd lived in the same time, it probably would have been regular knife fights between us. But I shake my head, clearing away the stray thoughts, and ask him another question. You just said, at the time I absorbed him, he was a true non-human. Then are you saying there comes a time when an Ender is not a true non-human? Sharp one, aren't you? If you'd existed in my generation, you'd have been worthy of being a comrade. A pity. Quote. That's right. Because we lack a soul, we are true non-humans, but there exists a time when the soul is born. What? That truth is something no one has ever told me before, so my eyes widen and I ask. Is that true? We, too, can gain souls. Yes. Are you familiar with the beginning, development, twist, and conclusion of Enders? I am. A new world. No, that's not quite right. Returning to one's hometown and opening one's eyes. Meeting someone precious in the hometown, and cherishing them. Someday losing that person, and awakening to fate. Then returning to the head realm and gaining an audience with the future king. This is our beginning, development, twist, and conclusion. A fixed result, a fate that cannot be changed. At those words, I let out a silent sigh. For even I had not fully understood the final part, the conclusion, of an Ender's fate. So gaining an audience with the future king, is the end of our story. I recall the Ender's tale that the underworld once showed me. Come to think of it, that was how it was. It was the same with the Ender's tale, and the myth of the future king explained by Tae Yal Jaeon. They all end with the 7 brilliances kings or the Enders returning to the supreme deity of heaven, or the future king, and living happily or enjoying eternal paradise. Just like Yang Soo Jin says, it's as if a fruit is being harvested. Our soul is born after we gain an audience with the future king. That's why so few Enders have left behind split souls or lingering shadows. The detailed principle is that only after the audience, when the absolute within us is suppressed, can the foundation for the soul sprouting be formed. Quote. This is also the first time I'm hearing this. But I understand. From the beginning, all those I gained information about Enders from had never actually entered the audience chamber. Figures like the lingering thought of the Tridakna vast cold heavenly king or the obsidian devil heavenly king never gave me any information about the audience chamber, so this post-audience chamber information is something I'm hearing from Yang Soo Jin for the first time. Wait, if our soul only comes into being after the audience chamber? Yes, it doesn't really mean much. If you don't surpass him, whether you have a soul or not, there's no hope either way. Jik. I notice the wheel behind my back gradually overloading. Resisting the revision of the head realm is putting quite a burden on it. Even though I've stretched time, it seems there isn't as much left as I expected. As the very act of our soul being born after gaining an audience with him, part of our beginning, development, twist, and conclusion. That's right. Quote. Then one more thing. If a soul is born, what happens after we are defeated by him? Can you tell me? That's information about him. It is his domain, so if I speak of it, he will notice. I let out a silent sigh and nod. All right, then do you know anything about the Radiance Mantra or Hyuksa? At my words, Yang Soo Jin responds with a slightly bewildered tone. Question mark. Are you talking about the Radiance Supreme Deity? What's the Radiance Mantra? Is it something those idiots made after I died? Quote. It's nothing. It seems Yang Soo Jin doesn't know anything about Hyuksa or the Radiance Mantra. One last thing, Kijijijik. Realizing the wheel is overheating and on the verge of exploding, I pick one final question. Does a trustworthy governing immortal refer to a governing immortal who has cast off their immortal title and wears no leash? Correct. In my era, there was only one such person, but judging by your words, it seems a few more exist in the later generation. Quote. Can the underworld be trusted? I recall the compassionate and trustworthy image the underworld once showed me. And also, the subtly suspicious schemes I sensed beneath it all. As the head realm revises the world, the power of the wheel reaches its limit. There's only one reason I trusted that one. Though it is partially because that one possesses no immortal title, and thus is not mere livestock. But the reason I, with power barely at the level of an immortal lord, dared to enter the audience chamber is. Yang Soo Jin's figure begins to fade beyond the taiji. Even so, his lingering shadow sheds bloody tears and continues to look at me. Because that person brought their Gandhara and faced the audience chamber together with me. That person may have their own schemes, but they are my comrade in arms, and they are truly someone you can trust. Trust them, and comfort them. As the world is swallowed by the taiji, Yang Soo Jin shouts in a bitter tone. As much as all the arrangements left behind by the lapis lazuli heavenly kings, are always personally retrieved by that one. That one is the saddest being in this world. We must become that person's hope. Only that person must be trusted. Only them. At last, Yang Soo Jin vanishes into the taiji, and as I feel the flow of the world's fate returning to normal, I receive Yang Soo Jin's final words as a point of topic. For only that one is the being the fate supreme deity treasures most dearly. With that, I return to the original flow of fate. Chapter 678. Tragic History 2. Single quote. It is a meeting that gives me much to think about. Through this encounter, I obtain information that is truly one of a kind in this world. The testimony of a being who reached the audience chamber. It is unimaginably precious information. At this level, honestly, it is information valuable enough to propose a deal even if I face the great mountain supreme deity again 100 million years from now. Of course, considering the great mountain supreme deity's cunning and meticulous nature, there's a possibility he will shut his mouth after the deal or forcibly ignore the agreement. Still, it's information worth enough to buy some time. Thank you, Yang Su-jin. I offer deep gratitude to the lingering thought of Yang Su-jin, and continue to read through the time that has passed. As time passes, at the end of the 9th cycle, I meet a truly welcome face. Haha, Yuan Li, you rascal. Seeing you after so long, you're really endearing. Have you been well? Did you finish your closed-door training enjoyably? Cuff, Kururuk. I reveal my presence, controlling it at roughly the star-shattering stage level, and Yuan Li collapses on the spot, trembling all over. How does the G-Grade 1 know this lowly concubine? Lowly concubine, so your gender identity was female? I ask out of curiosity. That is, aha, I see. Since I appear male, you're racking your mind to appeal to me. So your gender identity doesn't particularly lean either way. Well, there's no need to worry. Why would I kill you? Ahaha, thank you very m. Enough. Shut up. There's no need to answer. I grab Yuan Li by the hair and speak. Seeing your history makes it all the clearer. You're still someone who deserves to die. I already thought he was a disgusting bastard before, but reading Yuan Li's history at my current realm makes it clear again. This trash is far filthier than I expected. I click my tongue as I count. The number of innocent mortals he tortured and refined into ghost kings, the living beings he murdered and tortured just to craft a single Dharma treasure. Frankly, even touching him right now feels like touching filth. It's disgusting, but I have no choice. I need to vent my anger right now. If I cross into the 10th cycle in this state, I'm not confident I'll be able to keep my sanity when this bastard kills Buk Hyunghwa. Even if it's time that has already passed, I absolutely cannot forgive this bastard. Therefore, I need to tear him apart to my heart's content right now before witnessing the moment he kills Buk Hyunghwa to ensure I don't lose my sanity in the next cycle. Let's start light. Shall we relive some old memories? Recalling the time back on Earth when I played shuttlecock kicking with my friends, I fold Yuan Li in half and start using his body as a shuttlecock. Poong, Puong, Kuog, Kuog, Senior, please spare me. I'll serve you. If you say one more word, I'll rip out your tongue and use it for jump rope. UUP. At my words, Yuan Li sobs but keeps his mouth closed, and after thoroughly enjoying my shuttlecock game, I draw out glass true fire and form it into a whip. Since I've had fun with shuttlecock, shall we try top spinning next? Yup. Sensing something ominous from my glass true fire, Yuan Li trembles in fear. I press him down and compress him into the shape of a spinning top, craft a suitable board nearby, place him there, and begin lashing him mercilessly. Quack, KKI, don't scream. If you scream, I'll jump rope with your torso. UUP, up. Oh ho, look at this guy. Seeing you not scream, I guess you can still endure. Then shall I raise the power? Kuog, you bastard, just what in the world did I do wrong that you're doing this to me? As I toy with Yuan Li and feel a refreshing clarity, he screams with tears of blood. I find it absurd and ask in return. This idiot, if you had died after ascending from the head realm and ended up in the underworld, the punishment you'd have received would have been far more painful than this. I'm being merciful to the point of a gentle caress right now, so why the outrage? More importantly, when you tortured mortals and lower stage cultivators, you tortured them just like this, didn't you? How do you kn? See could it be, you can read someone's history so. Sacred vessel, by the way, I believe I told you I'd jump rope if you opened your mouth again. I grab the spinning Yuan Li, twist him like a pretzel into a rope, and start jump roping. Yuan Li screams madly, but it doesn't matter. Suuaa, the very bottom of Yuan Li's black castle. There, tens of thousands of vengeful souls who had been tortured by Yuan Li and were unable to attain release due to their resentment, begin to find peace upon hearing Yuan Li's screams. Can you see it, Yuan Li? Right now, those who suffered at your hands are attaining peace through your screams. Kuog, Senior, please forgive me. I'll live righteously. I'll abandon my cultivation and just live at the core formation stage. No. I'll live at the chi refining stage. You still say you want to live? Listen well, you'll only be released from my hands when every last soul at the bottom of the Black Castle hears your screams and feels satisfied. That's. Let's see. There are even souls for whom screams are not the condition for release. If I calculate the time it'll take for all of them to let go of their grudge through your screams, about 20,000 years should be enough. H. Hewick. Finally, Yuan Li seems to truly fall into despair and bursts into tears. Hua, ke ku ha 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 ha. And then he completely snaps. With no hope in sight, his mind collapses. Hua, wah, ku hayak, ku hee 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 heet, broken, huh. Clicking my tongue as I watch him, I stab a consciousness thread into Yuan Li's head and begin reassembling his shattered soul into the state it was just moments ago. Heyo hayak, gu, guk, kuog, ha, haaaaghk. This is. Who gave you permission to go insane? I look down at Yuan Li with cold eyes and speak. When you captured those weaker than you and experimented on them, tortured them, devoured them, and used them as materials for Dharma treasures, was it fun? Did you think a day like this wouldn't come? Listen well. At my icy words, Yuan Li can no longer even scream, only gagging helplessly. This is retribution. Of course, I can't bring retribution to every devilish cultivator in Mount Sumeru. But, at the very least for you alone. I will definitely return retribution, until the words, spare me, no longer leave your mouth. So, just accept it already. You can't even go insane anymore. With those words, my venting toward Yuan Li begins once again. This time, I communicate directly with the souls asleep within the Black Star Fortress and take their opinions into account. Most of them request to torture Yuan Li in the same way they were once tormented. I honor their requests, boiling him, grinding him, cooking him in every way, and repeatedly shattering his mind with illusion techniques. Unfortunately, the wheel overloads, so I cannot actually maintain this for a full 20,000 years. However, by accelerating the souls, minds, I grant them and myself a perceived 20,000 years and endlessly torture Yuan Li until all the souls attain complete release in a short period. Kwang, I kick Yuan Li one last time, and in front of his eyes, I grind to dust every Dharma treasure, pill, and artifact he has ever amassed. Hua, Yuan Li collapses on the spot, groaning with his physical voice, and endlessly prays in his heart to be killed. I watch as the last soul attains peace, and only then do I fling Yuan Li into the heaven-treading desert and flick my finger. Kukwik, Yuan Li explodes on the spot and died, and I watch as the head realm revises the world. I wonder what happens to the living beings of this world when they die. Even without asking, I know the answer. The head realm is where omniscience resides. They are simply absorbed into the omniscience and at an appropriate time, repeated once more. No punishment awaits the wicked. No compensation awaits the suffering. A world where everything is fixed for all eternity. Truly, is it impossible to intervene at this time point? I genuinely feel regret that I cannot intervene with the head realm because the flow of fate has already been determined. At the very least, I want to bless them, so their next lives escape the head realm, and they can live a better life. Is it truly impossible to do anything in this timeline that I return to through the Radiance Mantra? Finding it unfortunate, I once again accept the history that is revised. History repeats itself. In the 9th cycle, I am ultimately captured by Yuan Li and killed, turned into a blood tree. As I feel the consciousness of the me of this cycle fade, I continue to ponder. Is it truly impossible, for past cycles, for stories that have ended, to be reversed? The regret toward those I couldn't save in previous cycles, those I couldn't help reach peace. The rage toward villains like Yuan Li. And the suffocating frustration I feel when facing a fixed fate. Amid all those emotions, I prepare to move on into the 10th cycle. As a story that has already progressed truly unchangeable. And then, I see a green deer. Blink. The 10th cycle of fate approaches. I slowly rise from my seat. Just now, I think I saw something. Was it just my imagination? I can't quite remember. Perhaps it was just a hallucination. The head realm is full of bizarre things after all. But why is it? I feel as if I've very faintly grasped a sense of direction for the answer to my question. A story that has already progressed cannot be changed. A story that has already progressed. Yet I don't grasp it clearly. It's more like I've just received a topic of contemplation. And to not lose that topic, I endlessly continue to ponder in the depths of my heart essence. The events of the 10th cycle pass by rapidly. In past cycles, if there were moments of frustration, I would sometimes intervene and feel momentary satisfaction. But in this cycle alone, I absolutely do not interfere carelessly. Because intervening in this cycle feels like an insult to the me of the past who lives through it now, and an insult to Buk Hyunghwa. And, the promised time arrives. Well then, farewell. Cultivator Co. I wish to be with you again, Co Orabayoni. Buk Hyunghwa. her lower body gone, completely closes her eyes. The past me, with eyes flipped, exudes the Yin Soul Ghost incantation and flies toward Yuan Li, while I remain in place. Xiao Yun of the past chases after Yuan Li, but the me of the present remain only as a spirit form and sit beside Huanghua's corpse. It's because though I tortured Yuan Li to my heart's content in the last cycle, if I were to see him again at this point, I feel I wouldn't be able to hold back and would destroy the head realm. I see Buck Huanghua's soul fade and rise to the sky, absorbed into omniscience. Quote. Words are unnecessary. I gently brush her hand. That much, the head realm does not stop me. Quote. You can't put a value on connection, but if I were to assign value, you would be the most precious connection to me. Huanghua, I sit next to Buck Huanghua's corpse and mourn her for a long time. Not long after, the Xiao Yun of this point in time returns, buries her, and vows vengeance on Yuan Li. If I had simply continued on like that, reflecting on my past self, I come to realize something. If I had continued on in that state, I might have ended up like Yun Sok after killing Yuan Li. I would have probably pursued power like Yuan Li, blindly followed the Tao of the great mountain supreme deity, and, unable to withstand the pain, drowned in drugs, alcohol, and debauchery. I would have become a completely ruined person, seeking the devilish power, and eventually ascended to the blood yin realm. And after spiraling down like that, maybe I would have devoured all my other comrades as well. Whatever the outcome, I would have become someone completely opposite of who I am now. Truly, I thank you again and again, Huanghua. And, I offer my gratitude to Buck Huanghua of the 10th cycle, and also to the other being, who twisted the course of my fate. Oh Imperial Venerable, I look up at the girl who appears before me, dressed like an ordinary countryside woman in shabby clothing. Starting from this cycle, I have chosen not to accompany Xiao Yun of this point in time. I remain in spirit form by Buck Huanghua's side and offer a respectful bow to the one who appears before me. So this is the point. The moment you intervened, Xiao Yun of this time vanishes, and standing before Buck Huanghua's grave is the Heavenly Venerable of the Underworld. The Heavenly Venerable of the Underworld looks at me for a moment, then silently reaches into the void and makes a gesture as if grabbing and pulling something. It is then, the spirits of Cheon Sac City and Buck Huanghua, which had been pulled into the Akashic records, omniscience, seem to flow in reverse then vanish into, somewhere. I watch the scene with gleaming eyes. That is, though the living beings of the head realm are normally sucked into omniscience after death, I arranged for at least a few to be able to go to the afterlife. For I have made it so a part of the river of the netherworld flows into the head realm through the head realm's black ghost valley. Goo. At the same time, I feel an immense presence covering the entire head realm and marvel. The underworld has descended into the head realm, using that being as a medium. In an instant, yin energy fills the sky, and dark clouds cover the heavens. Within those clouds, the sun and moon of the head realm momentarily lose their light. That must be the ship of the Nether Crossing River I've only heard of. The original version of the Nether Crossing ship. The concept is so overwhelming that I let out a gasp without realizing. The moment I perceive it, I am left speechless and dumbfounded. I am once again reminded how unbelievable Bong Miang is, to have created that not as a supreme deity, but while he was still an immortal lord. This must be your first time meeting, isn't it? Say hello. This is the original version of the Nether Crossing ship that you know of, Song Jin. Sensing that the being before me is practically beyond even young Song, I greet them. Though this being carries the concept of a ship, they are not a literal vessel. They are closer to a formless law, affecting even Indra's net. They are the attraction force of the underworld that pulls in beings from the nether ghost realm, and all death energy that exists in the world. The very death aura that accumulates in my soul each time I die and regress. The very attraction force guiding souls to the underworld, that is the original version of the Nether Crossing ship. The black death energy that let me use the Death Path 3 Great Ultimates, is that one called Song Jin. And I, staring blankly at Song Jin, suddenly flinch in shock. The name is Song Jin. Are you surprised because it's the same name as the candidate Hyeon Rang? No need to be. To sever the repetition of Hyeon Rang, I, of this point in time, had the Hyeon Rang born in the head realm enter Black Ghost Valley and gave them the Tao title Song Jin. Then the sibling Song Jin had who was named Song Gil. They are the main personality of the warship, Song Jae, and that was monitoring the candidate Hyeon Rang. Since staying in the head realm too long can drive you mad, I had them ascend to Black Ghost Valley before they lost their mind. Quote. I gape at the shocking truth behind the original version of the Nether Crossing ship, Song Jin, who now blankets the sky and temporarily cuts off all observation from the head realm, and I awkwardly offer a greeting. On Song Jin's side, they also seem a bit bewildered as they greet me in return, seeing me, a heaven-earth great net immortal, suddenly appear in the head realm during this point in time. The name, Song Jin, itself implies the meaning of harbor of the Nether Crossing River. It's surprising you didn't find it strange the moment you first heard it. Then again, I suppose you of this time point was too young. Quote. Thinking back, it makes sense. The name Song Jin means harbor of the river, and considering that Song Jin is part of Black Ghost Valley, a sect under the Netherworld, it's highly likely that the river, in his name refers to the Nether Crossing River of the Netherworld. Quote. Thank you for revealing such an astonishing truth. And, once again, I offer my deepest gratitude for taking in Hyunghwa. Do not thank me. I took her in solely for my own use. I do not deserve gratitude. I rise from my seat at the underworld's words. Glancing up at the sky, I see that omniscience is attempting to revise again, but it seems the underworld is holding it off for a moment. The fact that you've come to me at this point in time, means you have something to say, doesn't it? Yes, even I did not expect you to make use of that mantra. Of course, I also didn't anticipate you'd end up trapped inside such a fixed fate either. Quote. In any case, though it is a shortcut through the mantra, since you have returned to Mount Sumeru after learning the disgrace of the Heavenly Venerables. TTAK. With a snap of her fingers, the underworld and I are transported into the deepest depths of the underworld using Song Jin as a medium. Now you can truly be accepted as a member of the underworld, and the time has come to tell you what can be told. The Heavenly Venerable of the underworld returns to their true form, sits down, and begins to speak. You asked before, what it means that I've returned from the audience chamber multiple times. I nod, and then, I flinch in surprise. Because a change appears in the underworld's expression. It is humiliation. Quote. Not once have I ever given up hope. Quote. Pardon, whenever the enders appear, every time. Every single time, I challenge the audience chamber together with them. Quote. Quote. I am startled by those words. Quote. I challenged it during the time of Silver Basket. During the time of Golden Body. And also during the time of Agate, of Lapis Lazuli. Afterwards, countless enders emerged, and even when the Obsidian Devil Heavenly King activated the immortal art that devoured Mount Sumeru and made the challenge, I was there. When the Salt Sea Supreme Deity gave it their all and made the challenge, I was also there together. During the time of the Tridacna Vast Cold Heavenly King, there truly seemed to be hope, so not only I, but Yu Haote, Hainyang, and others joined too. Even though I tried to stop them. With countless others, I challenged it again and again and again. Even during the time of Yang Su Jin, who was among the weaker enders, I still joined the challenge together. And, every time, I was sent back. The Heavenly Venerable of the Underworld's face begins to fill with pain and sorrow. Did the Heavenly Venerables ever say this to you? That they are livestock, and I am free, the closest existence to being a person. Quote. At the Underworld's continued lament, I can only be stunned. Quote. They are wrong. Even if I challenge the audience chamber every time, the future king revises history through the head realm and turns it into something that never happened, and sends me back. Then he extracts that history from the audience chamber and erases the memories. That is why I remember nothing from my time in the audience chamber. The underworld, carrying the wheel on her back, shows an agony in her eyes that I have never seen before. But, there is one thing I remember. The emotion of the future king. It was fondness. I gape at the shocking truth pouring from the underworld's lips. Have you heard the saying that the supreme deities are livestock, and the heavenly venerables are mere guard dogs? That perhaps I am free. No, if they are livestock, then I am nothing more than the fate supreme deity's pet. Chapter 679, Tragic History 3. Cooing. My chest tightens at the underworld soliloquy, and I feel as if I'm becoming distant. Single quote. The heavenly venerable of the underworld is a pet. How is one supposed to win against something like this? Even if we've vaguely known we must fight the future king, shouldn't there at least be a glimmer of hope for us to challenge him? If the great mountain supreme deity feels like a towering, sheer cliff, the future king feels like a horizon stretching endlessly into the distance. Is it even possible to reach that? I feel the overwhelming difference in rank indirectly and swallow a dry breath. And then, I realize the true meaning behind Yang Su-jin's words that the underworld must be consoled. I see. The only reason the underworld has endured until now is because the will to resist the future king is still alive. If the will of the heavenly venerable of the underworld breaks, and the underworld ultimately aligns with or pledges loyalty to the future king. If we fail in this generation, and leave it to the enders of the next. Even if we leave behind some kind of arrangement for the next enders, defeating the future king will become impossible. Radiance Hall, which governs life and fate. The underworld, which governs death and history. If both powers come to obey the future king, I feel like I'm suffocating. The moment the underworld breaks, all hope is lost. Just imagining it is this suffocating. What would it be like if it actually happens? Quote. Oh Imperial Venerable, just as I'm about to let out a silent sigh. Quote. There's no need to comfort me. I've already absorbed all my despair and grief into the arrangements of the successive lapis lazuli protecting heavenly kings, so that I won't give up on my own. Quote. Exclamation mark. I see. I've always wondered why Kong Min-hee seemed to receive none of the arrangements from previous enders. Now I understand. So the underworld used all the arrangements meant for Kong Min-hee as vessels to contain her sorrow and heartbreak. Originally, I might have criticized the underworld for stealing what was meant for Kong Min-hee. But after learning the truth, I can't dare bring myself to do so. Is receiving the arrangements meant for Kong Min-hee better than sharing the sorrow and grief of the underworld? Is it the right choice? If the underworld collapses under her own heartbreak and gives up, that itself would be an even greater catastrophe. They say Hyeon Mu lived through time equivalent to the sands of the Ganges. The underworld must be even older. And unlike Hyeon Mu or the other heavenly venerables, the underworld has carried within her body countless lives over countless Nayutas, embracing their joy, anger, sorrow, pleasure, and grief. If anything, staying sane is what's strange. But, as I dwell on these thoughts, I suddenly arrive at a certain conclusion. Quote. Wait, oh Imperial Venerable. There is something I want to ask. Speak. Quote. You. I glare at the heavenly venerable of the underworld for the first time and growl. Quote. All those massacres Kong Min-hee committed as the ghost guiding Holy Mother, all those times she killed herself. Were they not simply madness from absorbing resentful spirits, but because she accepted a portion of your sorrow and went mad? Quote. At my words, the heavenly venerable of the underworld seems to look down at me, then gently closes her eyes and speaks. That's right. Quote. I feel heat rush to my face as I spit out the words. Quote. Then what reason do I have to follow you, Imperial Venerable? What reason do I have to trust you? A reason, huh? At my words, the heavenly venerable of the underworld slowly opens her mouth. There are many reasons I could give. But those aren't the reasons you want to hear. Are they? Quote. I want to hear what the Imperial Venerable truly desires. To be honest, I don't know the true intentions of the heavenly venerable of the underworld. What does she really want? What is her relationship with the future king, and why do Hong Fan and Hyeon Mu owe her an apology? None of that can be understood without first hearing the underworld's true purpose. The reason I haven't been able to fully trust the underworld is also because she has never truly opened up her inner thoughts to me. I must hear it now. What is it that you desire, Imperial Venerable? Please, answer me. Quote. At my words, the underworld looks down at me for a moment, then slowly responds with a face as if dreaming. Quote. I wanted happiness. The underworld begins to speak again. A long time ago. Back when I was a mortal, all I wanted was to meet someone, fall in love, happily care for my parents, bear a child, raise that child, grow old and die slowly, and spend 100 years together with my partner in happiness. That was the purpose I had when I first felt what is called reason. Quote. But such a thing was never to be. Life was always full of hardship, and countless misfortunes and disasters rained down upon me. They struck my surroundings. They collapsed my neighbors, my country, and my star. And, as I alone survived in the midst of it all, I began to think. Why can't we be happy? To seek the ultimate answer to happiness, I set out on a long journey. That was the reason I first stepped onto the path of immortal cultivation. From the underworld's lips, her story of the past flows out. Through the traces of countless lives, I came to one realization. That even if fate tries to harm me, there is some kind of will protecting me. Some existence that guards me, ensuring that even if all else perishes, I alone remain safe. I thought about why that will protects me, and pursued it, and finally realized. That existence wishes to protect me even beyond fate. So, I, who first chased after happiness, began to chase after that existence. Quote. And while chasing that being, uncovering their true nature and tracking them down, I rose to true immortality, and attained the realm of governing immortal. And at last, I established a feat that approaches the absolute, and grasped a clue to that existence. A feat that approaches the absolute. That's right. At that time, there was no such system called the cycle of reincarnation. The proper reincarnation system only came into being after Salt Sea and I combined our strength to create the wheel. However, in any case, the beginning of the reincarnation system, including the wheel, was something I created for the first time in that era. As the underworld continues speaking, I grow confused. I was the first to remember a previous life. If there was no reincarnation system, how could you remember a past life? First, to explain that, we need to briefly talk about what a world without reincarnation, in other words, what the ideal world that the heavenly venerable of Void Hyeon Mu advocates for, is. Back then, when the reincarnation system didn't exist, living beings that died would go to the domain of purity. And, during the times when enders do not appear, the number of spirits that melted into the domain of purity would be born again in equal amounts into the world. Do you understand what that means? Quote. I instantly grasped the meaning behind those words. During the times when enders do not appear, spirits are born. The meaning is obvious. The very thing that brings spirits into existence in this world is the third absolute. In other words, the origin of ascenders. I had suspected it through triple divinity, but it's still a shock. I inhale sharply at the startling truth, and listen to the underworld's words. Your deduction is correct. Your absolute is the origin that births spirits into this world. This is just a hypothesis, but when all of you die, your absolute would go beyond the audience chamber, merge into one absolute, and from that single, merged absolute, spirits would be created. And if the future king or Hyuk Sa, or anyone else uses the splitting heaven mantra to recreate you all, from that moment on, spirits would no longer be born. Quote. In other words, spirits are originally born from the third absolute, live their lives in the world, and upon death, return to the third absolute. If the third absolute is absent, they melt into the domain of purity. Without the reincarnation system, all beings become one within the third absolute. That is the ideal world the heavenly venerable of Void argued for. For if death means becoming one with the third absolute, then that itself can be called the ultimate of martial arts. All beings could reach martial pinnacle just by dying. A world where all beings can easily reach martial pinnacle. The ideal world that the heavenly venerable of Void pursued, and the reason she declared that the underworld must be overthrown lies in this very background. However, hearing the underworld's words only confuses me more. That was the era without the reincarnation system that the imperial venerable lived in, and the law of that time. Correct. Quote. Then it's even stranger. If you draw a cup of water, then pour it back into the sea, and later draw water from the sea again, that water could never be the same, could it? Because once the water mixes with the sea, it becomes an entirely different water. It's the same principle as not being able to scoop up spilled water with exactly the same composition. That's true, but what if you think of it this way? You pour a cup of water into the sea, then track every single particle that was in that water, and retrieve only those particles from where they ended up in the sea. Quote. If so, then even spilled water can be gathered again, and even water that became one with the sea can be restored to its original state and verified. That's the kind of brute force method I used to confirm my past life. The underworld continues. At first, it took time that was like eternity. But as time passed, I grew more accustomed to recalling past lives. And as I confirmed a total of 108 feet past lives, I discovered something. The underworld's next words feel strangely steeped in a dream. The will of that someone who protected me did not begin with this life, but had continued since past lives. Someone had been endlessly watching over the existence called me since birth, and had been guarding and protecting me in every life. And at last, after confirming around 3,000 past lives, I was able to uncover that being's identity from one of those lives. Who is it? The underworld looks down at me and speaks. I can't help but be startled at her next words. That child who follows you. Quote. What? The first of the Radiant's 10 heavenly lords. In other words, a seat among the first Radiant's supreme deity. Tingle, tingle, the Radiant's mantra vibrates. At the same time, as if triggered by the underworld's words, a memory from a distant past flashes through my mind. A scene where a dozen or so beings, seemingly immortal lords, are holding council within light. At the head of that gathering sits Hong Fan, and beside him, standing beside Hong Fan, holding his hand and blushing, is the heavenly venerable of the underworld. You should voice your opinion too, Yang Hwe, Yang Wei. I'll say it again. Without you, there wouldn't even be a Radiance Hall. Hong Fan, gently calling the underworld by the name, Yang Hwe, wears an expression warmer and more emotionally vivid than any I've ever seen on him before. I don't know his true name, but in every life, that being who always bore the name Hong Fan was the very will that watched over me across all those lifetimes. Quote. And I recalled the life where I formed a bond with him. Through that, I came to understand. As ironic as it is, it seems I was once one of the original members of the first Radiant's supreme deity. With a blank face, I gaze at the original member of the first Radiant's supreme deity, standing before me. But, even if I was one of the Radiant's supreme deity, even if I once safeguarded fate, I still remember, Hong Fan, sincerely cherished and loved me. That memory alone has never faded. And, in a distant past, in one of my past lives, Hong Fan once said something to me. The underworld looks down at me with their black eyes and speaks. That only me overcoming and surpassing fate is the end of the story, and only then will he and I find the ultimate answer. Chapter 680, Tragic History 4. Overcoming Fate. The moment I recalled those words, I finally understood what ultimate happiness is, and what I must truly do. The underworld looks down at her palm. I must become the life supreme deity. I must not allow the fate supreme deity to monopolize the absolute and rule over Mount Sumeru alone. After all, true happiness can never be established in a world where a single being wields fate alone. Quote. I will become the life supreme deity. Then, I will drag down the current owner of fate and sift through to find a good being who will never fall into corruption, seating them as the fate supreme deity. That is my purpose, and also one of the reasons why the underworld has judged good and evil all this time. Quote. I finally understand and accept why the judgments of the underworld are carried out. Indeed, it has all been part of the underworld's grand cause. However, I ask the underworld again. If becoming the life supreme deity and an entity who counterbalances fate, and enthroning a good being as the fate supreme deity is your goal, then please swear it. I swear it upon my wheel that governs reincarnation. If there is falsehood in my words, may I immediately lose all authority over the cycle of reincarnation and the wheel. Quote. Understood. In that case, if it's not too discourteous, I would like to ask one more thing. Do so. The life supreme deity and so on. What is the method of walking the immortal Tao of an absolute, and what exactly is the advancement ritual to become a supreme deity of an absolute? At those words, the underworld answers gladly. The absolute immortal Tao is something exceedingly simple. Life, Sheng. The life we live itself is the absolute immortal Tao. Quote. Our life is the absolute immortal Tao. Is that what you are saying? Yes. In some ways, it's a very much obvious statement. Why do you think the upper immortal advancement ritual exists in the first place? From upper immortal, one is granted the opportunity to choose the pathway of fate or history, and from that realm, one begins to actively wield the power of fate or history. But this has always been the case. According to the life one is born into, heaven, earth, and heart are divided, and each of them uses their own abilities, do they not? Quote. The absolutes, fate, history, and your 7 brilliance. These 3 can be considered the great background that composes this world. These 3 great absolutes are the great laws that no being born into this world can do without. That means, all beings of this world naturally contain the 3 great absolutes, and the absolute is embedded within everyone. The upper immortal advancement ritual is the process of specializing the absolute within oneself. I listen closely to the words of the underworld and gain many insights. Among the absolutes embedded within oneself, focusing power into either the absolute of fate or the absolute of history and becoming specialized in that. Making only that specialized absolute supreme within oneself. That is the upper immortal advancement ritual. And, it is the same for the advancement ritual to become an owner of an absolute. Ra beta E. Quote. That means, to become an owner of an absolute, two things are needed. First is qualification. Second is achievement. First, the qualification, supremacy. Among all the living beings in this world, the one who understands the absolute most supremely gains the qualification to advance to seize it. And, what is required to seize that absolute is achievement. Keep achieving feats so great they surpass the value of the absolute itself, and elevate your own worth to be above that of the absolute. That is the core of the basic method to becoming an owner of an absolute. Then, the underworld begins to speak about the Life Supreme Deity Advancement Ritual. To be honest, I don't know the qualifications for advancing in the other absolutes. But I do know well the qualification for the Life Supreme Deity Advancement. Life is history. Therefore, if one possesses the oldest history in this world, and knows the most history, that becomes the qualification to ascend as the Life Supreme Deity. The oldest history. As I ponder that truth, I suddenly realize there's a strange contradiction. But, even though the Imperial Venerable bears the title of the oldest one, in reality, you are not actually the oldest being, are you? At my words, the underworld nods. Correct. The title the oldest one, in truth, suits the future king best. Including all groups, ideologies, and individuals, that being is older than everything that exists in Mount Sumeru as a singular entity. Then how in the world could it be? As I ask, I immediately come to the realization myself. The reason the Imperial Venerable created the wheel, could it be, for that? It is so. This wheel is something Salt Sea made together with me in order to help me become enthroned as the Life Supreme Deity. In other words, it is reincarnation. And, as you know, every immortal beast possesses such a power. History induction, Li Shiyu Dao. It is the authority to trace unknown history through objects or information that act as mediums. In the end, history is information. Through every soul that exists in this world, I use their souls as mediums to endlessly trace the past before I was born, and collect that information. Kuriririk. An illusion rises before my eyes. No, this is not merely an illusion. It is the underworld. The pasts of all the spirits that exist in the underworld reflect beyond the wheel of reincarnation. And, based on that information, I trace back the origin essence of your seven brilliance, and reach out my hand to the cycle of spirits that existed before the reincarnation system was established. The underworld's wheel rotates before something enormous. Even without reincarnation, it remains a fact that the waters once mixed into the vast sea that is the Absolute are drawn up again and born as beings. And although that may not be the current reincarnation system, from another perspective, there is a margin of possibility to consider it, reincarnation. My mouth opens instinctively. This is the true goal of the underworld, her grand plan. Through history revision, I revise that ambiguous margin of possibility itself into a reincarnation system that existed before me. In doing so, I complete the truth that reincarnation existed before me, and continue to infinitely remember my previous lives, internalizing the personalities and experiences of those previous lives into myself. I accept even the previous lives from before the future king was born, and accumulate a longer history than his. That is the method to enthronement as the Life Supreme Deity that I have devised, and completed with Salt Sea's help. At last, I fully understand what the authority of causality arrangement possessed by the wheel exists for. The authority to arrange history and causality prior to one's birth according to one's own needs. It is quite literally the power to rewrite the past and reinterpret the principles to align with oneself, to reach the origin of life. That is the true power of the wheel that both the underworld and I possess. In this way, if I remember even the past lives from the era of the future king, and continue to recall past lives without end, one day, I will be able to recall all previous lives up to the moment this world was created. That is the Life Supreme Deity Advancement Ritual that I have established. Through this, I can fulfill both qualification and achievement. This is an achievement that is not just about creating my own past lives, but truly bringing into existence a reincarnation system in the past, thereby creating previous lives for all living beings. And if that is done, then I will truly become a body worthy of the title Oldest One. By remembering past lives. If the concept of past lives or reincarnation did not exist, then creating such concepts and excavating the history before one's own birth. Thus adding to one's age, history, and time to earn the title of the Oldest One and become the owner of life. That is the full secret the underworld holds, her purpose, and the true reason the wheel was created. I see. Back when I met her with Hong Fan when she was Tae Yal Jaeon, The Tao that had to be completed spoken through Tae Yal Jaeon's mouth was this. Having realized many of the secrets the underworld holds, I follow with one more question. Quote. There is one more thing I'd like to ask. In that case, did my master join forces with the Imperial Venerable and create the wheel solely for the Imperial Venerable's sake? Of course not. He had his own reasons as well. But, no. Ask the Great Mountain Supreme Deity directly about that. Either way, hearing it from your fellow disciple is the best way. From the underworld's words, I realize that hearing the reason my master created the wheel is itself part of some transmission ritual of power. Maybe that's also why the Great Mountain Supreme Deity can draw power from the Salt Sea. Quote. Thank you. As I listen to the underworld's explanation, much of the unease I felt toward her is cleared away. And I apologize for continuing to trouble you, but there is one last point I must address. Please answer this question as well. What is the question? I, in one of my previous lives, heard a certain conversation shared between Hong Fan and Hyeon Mu. I recount to the underworld the conversation that Hong Fan and Hyeon Mu had during the time I fought a battle with Hyeon Mu. At those words, the underworld's eyes shine. Quote. I see. A hidden history. A hidden history, you say. As you know, in this world, there are too many histories that have been concealed or sealed by earth immortals and immortal beasts. In other words, what is called ancient force. And, among those ancient forces, there are some that have been sealed away by supreme deities or by the future king personally revising history through the head realm. If it's an event discussed in such a way between Hong Fan and the Northern Heavenly Venerable, it is likely a history that the future king personally intervened to erase. If such a thing exists, then that means there is a truth that the Imperial Venerable does not know. Will the Imperial Venerable not be continuously outmaneuvered by the future king because of that truth? It's fine, I have no need to particularly expend my strength on that. Pardon. The Heavenly Venerable of the underworld gazes into the distance. It is as if she is recalling certain individuals. And with the underworld's next words, I immediately feel I know exactly who those individuals are. The immortal beast kings, they exist for that very purpose. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. All the ancient forces in this world are forgotten stories. Failed dreams. And, in essence, they are massive lumps of pent-up grief, no different from knots of resentment in the chest. The immortal beast king refers to the being who can read the forgotten stories, the hidden and sealed dreams and ancient forces, and relieve the pent-up grief of history. One could say they are a kind of shaman. So when one refers to shaman family methods, they are often methods related to past immortal beast kings. Did it not refer to the one who best borrows the power of the head realm? Why do you think they must best borrow the power of the head realm in the first place? Because it's through acknowledging and understanding the pent-up grief of sealed history and forgotten dreams that the immortal beast king guides and helps pass on the souls. That very will is what the Akashic records hold in high regard, which is why it lends its power. As I organize the truths about the immortal beast king, I pose another question to the underworld. Quote. During the era of vast cold, why did the underworld not make the challenge after Yu Haotai and Hanyang advanced as supreme deity and immortal beast king respectively? In Yu Haotai's case, I tried to dissuade him, but he insisted on advancing in the middle of battle and followed me. As for Hanyang, rather, afraid he would get in the way of my life supreme deity advancement, he suppressed his own immortal beast king advancement in order to avoid drawing upon the power of the Akashic records as much as possible. Quote. I see. I apologize for asking something unnecessary. It's fine. What's done is done, and Goo. Before I know it, I feel the revision of the head realm, which the underworld had been holding back, approaching right before me once more. It is about time for me to once again look back upon my past history. You understand now why I cannot help you all. Quote. Yes. Aside from her Gandhara, the underworld also clearly has the power she has been accumulating, and the power of the wheel. Yet even so, she has never once used either of those powers in an active manner. The reason, no doubt, must be because the power she is accumulating and the power of the wheel itself are being poured entirely into excavating history for her life supreme deity advancement. Quote. I am deeply grateful that you took time to share these precious truths with me. I kneel before the underworld and bow. I have succeeded in hearing all the cards the underworld had kept hidden of her own will. Though there are still parts of history forcibly erased by the future king, those are beyond my reach. So, I finally let go of my doubts toward the underworld and decide to place full trust in her. Quote. It's fine. And, as for making Hia into the ghost mother, I, too, feel sorry. Perhaps sensing my heart, the underworld gives a faint, bitter smile and apologizes. But, as that is a misfortune I deliberately gave to that child, one day, it will all return to her as a blessing. Quote. Yes, I understand. Then, I offer my respects to the underworld, then turn around within the taiji that revises the world. The next time we meet properly, let it be after I survive the great mountain supreme deity. Do as you please. I hope you are victorious in your fight against Great Mountain. Having heard all the countless truths from the underworld that I could learn, I return once again to the scenes of the head realm with gleaming eyes. Many of my doubts are cleared. Now that I understand the true will of the wheel, only one task remains. Now, let us truly advance forth to find the clue to Martial Pinnacle. Thus, I begin again the long journey to seek the clue to Martial Pinnacle. And then, at last, the end of the 10th cycle. Having reached the scene where I defeat Yuan Li, I suddenly see something strange. Single quote. What is that? Before my past self who is returning to Cheon Sac City, someone appears.